Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Esoteric Agenda. I'm Roger Hanson, your host, here with my co-host Mark Edworthy, my brother Robert Hanson, and Bob Dub. Now, V might be coming into the room. I don't know. He was here earlier, and he went silent and then went offline, so I don't know how that's going to be working out. So tonight we are going to go deeper with Plotinus. Last week we were talking about Plotinus and Neoplatonism. We discussed basically, I know I didn't use the terminology, but it was the perfect circle. We discussed, circle of the same, the great year. That's another one. That's what this topic's going to be about, the great year before Plotinus. Now, for people who aren't aware, Plotinus was the person who actually came up with the philosophy concerning Neoplatonism. Now, he did study Plato, but the difference between Plato and Plotinus was that Plotinus felt that he was bringing out the inner secrets of what Plotinus's teachings were. And that's the big difference. And even though he was the one who started Neoplatonism, he didn't write it down. It was Porphyry, his student, who wrote the Enneads after Neoplatonism came out and Plotinus had passed away, I believe. But he's the one who wrote it down. And we'll get to Porphyry here in a little bit, but I want to step back. I want to talk about the great year before Plotinus. So, Bob Dub, are you here by any chance?
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay, so are you aware of anything that I just mentioned?
No, this is all new to me. I have never heard of Plotinus.
Okay, so you're going to hear some good stuff tonight. Now,
awesome.
With here recently in the last couple of episodes, I always start out with a question that I ask you guys, and I want to ask another question. Okay, actually, I want to ask you two questions. Okay, this is the first one. Did humanity discover the same cosmic clock as what Plotinus did with the great year?
If Plotinus is he was human, so of course, yeah, humanity discovered. People, silly question, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, so you say yes?
People need logical question.
Oh, is it?
Or unless you're saying Plotinus wasn't human.
Did humanity discover the same cosmic clock?
Well, humanity as a collective.
If there's only one cosmic clock to discover, then anybody who discovers it discovers the one.
Okay, you're pretty sharp. That was actually a pretty legitimate answer, Bob. Just for somebody who don't know about Plotinus. That was actually pretty legit. What about you, Robert?
Well, I don't know. I don't really much understand it until you got more read into it.
Okay, so So I got a second one then. This is a little bit more easier. This is something that you don't have to have much logic for. Okay. Where do ideas come from?
Well, I've got some good things that I can say about that.
Say something.
According to Vince, consciousness is the prima materia. So before anything else existed, consciousness existed. And consciousness took itself and solidified itself, compressed itself into very small things to create stuff. And according to Vince, this consciousness pervades everything, and our thoughts are that consciousness getting into our brains, as if our brain is a radio receiver, and a thought comes. There we go. There's an answer for you. Don't know if it's correct, but don't know if it is correct.
You're on a ball. Dude, you on a roll.
Well,
Okay.
Hold up. Bob or Robert, hold on a minute. Mark was getting ready to say something.
Okay.
So-
Either I think, therefore I am, or I am, therefore I think. I think these two. And
I think,
actually,
therefore I am.
yeah. Well, yeah. Which one
Or-
is more? It's a chicken and egg sort of thing.
Yes.
On your point, I was listening of the first lines in Genesis. God created light, darkness. So are we saying that God is consciousness?
Well, according to what Jesus thought, or the group of people that are now called Jesus, but according to those philosophers then, the love pre-existed material matter. And so God is love, and love is God. And the one who lives in love lives in God, and God lives in him. So basically, there is some sort of spiritual force that is love, not loving, but love. And so when that love acted, there was results of the love's actions.
Right. So
when the love created sound, that sound resulted in light somehow, and the creation of light showed that there were places where there was no light.
now, what was you getting ready to say, Robert?
Well, conscience, like you guys are saying, it's to me, it's like a three different thing. You have, because you look at caveman, how they were, okay. They didn't understand love, but then they didn't understand a few other things. But they adapted to their thinking, the way they understand things at that point in time. And they didn't know what things were back then. So you can't really say intelligence comes intelligence comes in different ways, in different levels of a conscience. You have like Neanderthal, somewhat Neanderthal, and a bright person. And and each one had difference and the understanding.
So let me break into this.
Actually, before you continue, I've got a question for you. What are you defining as consciousness?
Who,
How do
me?
you define consciousness? Yeah.
I haven't even mentioned consciousness yet.
You have?
I said, where do ideas come from?
Okay. Okay.
You see, this. I mean,
well, conscience.
So let me break into this. You guys have already gotten into consciousness, so let me kind of break into this a little bit. You guys answered that question beautifully. All right, and I want to go further with this. Okay, so Vince is actually a good example of what Bob Dub was talking about, and he brings up really good points. Okay, when we did a stream together, I mentioned this before, and I really messed it up when I brought it up, but like I can bring it up now and make it better. So when we encounter like philosophers like Plotinus, it's really tempting to imagine that he invented like this entire new way of understanding reality. You know what I mean? But for me, first of all, let me just say history rarely works that way. Okay. Now, most great philosophers, they inherit ideas that have been developed for centuries, and then they refine them, and then they expand on them. Sometimes they completely transform them. Now, Plotinus was no exception to this, all right? Now, one of the central ideas in Neoplatonism is that reality unfolds through vast cosmic cycles, all right? But Plotinus did not invent the great year. And for me to explain on that, I have to say this, like, long before Rome, long before Christianity, even before Plato, ancient civilizations around the world were already asking the same question. And that is, does time move forward or does it move in circles? And, you know what I mean? And the one big question is what, or is even now, is what is the great year? And before I go further, I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys know what the great year is?
I was just wondering that. I was wondering that all the way through last week's discussion. You
No
never
idea.
actually really defined it.
Okay, so how about you, Robert? Have you ever heard of the Great Year?
No. But when was it? When was it? What? When was this brought up?
This was
The
brought
idea.
this was brought up in ancient times. Plotinus was right around 400 AD, which I don't really call ancient. That's more modern to me. If it's after, 80, I don't really consider it ancient history. You know what I mean? So from 0 to now, I consider that more modern than ancient history. Anything in BC, I consider more of an ancient history kind of thing, but I'll let it slide this time.
I'm going to criticize you on a minor little point. It should be AD 400 in the year of our Lord 400, not 400 in the year of our Lord. That does make sense.
I never said
not 400 AD, but AD 400.
Oh, okay.
That's a minor sort of
Thank you.
point.
Thank you for your compliance. I haven't said that in so long. I had, yeah. So, now you were asking what the great year is. The great year is the idea that, like, the cosmos itself experiences like an immense cycle. Now, unlike an ordinary year measured by Earth's orbit around the sun, the great year refers to the completion of a much larger celestial pattern. Now, what happened is like ancient observers, they noticed that the heavens repeated themselves, and that the sun rises, the moon waxes and wanes, and the seasons return, and then the stars slowly would shift. Nothing inside the sky appears completely random. All right. So if the heavens moved in cycles, they said perhaps history itself does as well. This was basically a simple observation that became one of like the oldest philosophical questions in human history. And that would bring you into Plato's myth of Ur. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. Have you?
Remind us.
Well, I can get to that first, but I also wanted to kind of make that a little bit more simple. Like, you know how the Earth wobbles?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a rotation. One wobble would be a great year. One of Earth's rotations, it's wobble.
Oh yeah, the 2000 year. 2000 years, yeah, 2070 something or something. 2770 something.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, one of the earliest philosophical descriptions for Plato's myth of Ur appears near the end of Plato's Republic. Okay, so rather than ending with politics, what Plato does is he ends with a myth, and the myth of Ur is what he ended with. Now, the myth of Ur tells the story of a soldier named Ur who dies in battle. Okay. Now, after death, he witnesses souls standing before cosmic judges. Some ascend and some descend. And after their rewards and punishment, they gather before Plato, or they gather together with what Plato describes as the spindle of necessity. So this spindle is operated by the three fates. You guys heard of the three fates? This is the one Robert likes. Have you heard of the three fates before, Mark? I know Bob does.
No.
Okay. Remember last week when we started discussing the primordials, or the primordial?
Yeah.
The fates for the Greek and the Romans are the primordials. Okay.
Okay.
Now, Bob W., you know who the fates are, don't you?
They're represented by different things in different cultures, aren't they? I think Shakespeare has them in Macbeth as the three sisters stirring up the future. Yeah, that's what I understand by them. Yeah.
Now, according to Plato, and the spindle is operated by the three fates, and those would be Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Now, together they weave the motions of the heavens. Souls choose new lives, then return to Earth, and history continues. Then the universe is presented not as chaos, but as an ordered machine governed by harmony and necessity. Okay? And there's an astronomical foundation that goes with that too. All right? Why would Plato describe the universe like this? That's the first thing you have to ask yourself, okay? Now, the reason why he would do that is because Greek philosophers believed the heavens revealed invisible order, okay? And they carefully observed the movements of the sun, the moon, the visible planets, and fixed stars. Now, over generations, patterns began to emerge. Some movements repeated every few years, others required centuries. One movement, however, proved especially mysterious, and that the slow drifting of the stars themselves was what was the mysterious part about it, because stars would slowly drift. You know what I mean? And this would later become associated with what we now call the precession of the equinox. That would be the wobbling of the Earth. Okay. Like if you take a top, you know what a top is? And the toy where you just spin it and it wobbles.
It's spinning, yeah.
Then that's what they're explaining right there. That's the precession of the equinox at a slower rate, of course. But that's what they're talking about there. Now, a lot of the ancient thinkers back then, they debated on its exact length. A lot of them had it, didn't have it down. Like they didn't know exactly what it was. But many of them did. They saw it as evidence that the heavens possess like this unmanageable long cycle. You know what I mean? Does it all of this make sense to you?
Yeah. Carry on.
Not completely. What I'm seeing is that the astronomers watched the heavens and plotted the charts of the stars, but noticed that there were small anomalies. Right. And from that, they discovered that the Earth's rotation wasn't smooth, but had a little bit of a wiggle in it.
Right.
Is that okay? All right, then I am following you.
Now that wobble is like what we call the North Pole. like the Earth doesn't like just rotate, like just turn real perfect. That North Pole actually wobbles. It actually has its own little wobble, like a, well, we call them tops here. But Mark just said another word.
Yeah, just
spinning
like
top.
spinning tops. Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing.
It does that. You know what I mean? It creates this little circle that returns around to the next. It completes a complete circle basically. That would be the great year. They didn't know that back then, but that was their observations. And they know it now. So that would be what the great year is. And this takes us into the Stoics in the eternal return. Have you guys ever heard of the Stoics?
Yes. That's a
Tell us.
school of philosophers, right?
Yeah.
That they think that they say you've got to grin and bear it.
Mm.
Right?
What about you, Mark? What do you think?
Yeah. On the same concept as Bob. Just
Well, there's different. Ain't there different meanings of it? I had never heard of it, but
No, there's no different meaning. Stoics are like a group of philosophers, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no different meaning for it. Like,
well, no,
you
I
had
was
the
referring to like each one of them could a specific type of different thing, but comes to about the same.
No, not with the Stoics. Like you
I
had.
would sort of agree. I would
Nah,
sort of agree that they had small differences between them, all the different Stoic philosophers.
very little,
Very little. All right. Okay.
because
Okay.
like you know how we have philosophers today that they don't want to like change their philosophies because, well, if you listen to a philosopher they will always stick to their original philosophy, and if there's something that's profound enough that comes along that helps them change their way of thinking, then they'll apply that to their philosophy, but they'll never go against what their philosophical belief is.
Yeah, but ain't
Have you ever heard of anybody doing that, guys?
No, I wasn't meaning that one single person. No, I was just meaning that there were a few different Stoic philosophers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Weren't they?
Yeah, there were different ones. They had differences. Don't get me wrong, but they always they were the ones that, like, in today's religion, these are the people that you would think were dogmatic. You know what I mean? Like the dogmatic religious fervor kind of stuff going on. That's the way the Stoics were. They believed in this is the way it is. Like you said, you know, this is the way it is. Put up with it. Tough on you. You know what I mean?
What was their main thing? What was their teaching of what?
Well, this is the Stoics in the eternal return. So let me get on to there, and because we could get into the whole conversation of the Stoics if you want, but like I'm actually trying to move this forward. Okay. And this has to do with the Stoics and the eternal return. And it'll give you kind of an idea of where this is going or what type of people they are. Okay. Because not every philosopher agreed with Plato, okay? And the Stoics, they actually took the idea even further. They believed that the universe itself periodically ended, okay? Then began all over again. Now, I mentioned this before. This is kind of like the Hindu beliefs when it comes to Kali. Because a lot of people today they know about Kali and Kali being all about destruction, but they don't understand that Kali destroyed in order to create an entire universe again, all over again. You know, and that's kind of what the Stoics believe. They believe that the universe itself periodically came to an end and then began again. And that's everything, every civilization, every conversation, every life, and it repeated endlessly.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So death and rebirth at
Mm.
all sorts of different levels.
Like, oh, you mean like solar systems dying and then rebuild?
Right. Now think of like samsara, or the Hindu what is that, the Kali Yugas.
I don't know.
Now for this doctrine, it became known as like the eternal return. That's actually the name you can pull up, and it'll explain it to you. And now, according to the Stoic thinkers, the universe periodically dissolved into like divine fire, and this process was called ekpyrosis, and that means from the fire. Okay, so the cosmos was born again, and whether history repeats in every detail was debated among the Stoics themselves, but the central ideal remained. The cosmos is governed by recurring cycles rather than a single unrepeated or unrepeatable timeline. So for the Stoics, time wasn't a line; it was a will. Does that make sense?
That's kind of interesting.
You mean like
Yeah.
your will of doing something?
No, like a will.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Like
okay.
a will.
A wheel on a car. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So now we're all on board there. You understand that?
Yeah.
You haven't said nothing yet. You get kind of weirded out when I start talking this kind of philosophical stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you're okay. So now we have to do another shift. We have to talk about Egypt and the stars. Okay. So we go from the Stoics and we go from the Greeks to the Egyptians. Okay, because the Greeks weren't alone. Okay, long before classical philosophy, the Egyptians built their civilization around recurring celestial patterns too. The annual flooding of the Nile corresponded closely with the heliacal rising of Sirius. All right. And a lot of the history and the mythology or the religions of the Egyptians back then rotated around the flooding of the Nile. You'll find that in a lot of their stories and a lot of their beliefs. This is both the practical calendar and a sacred sign of renewal, basically. So that they actually started developing like a practical calendar around this stuff. And for the best way of really saying it is like the sky god Nut or Newt. V doesn't like me calling her Nut, but it's Newt or Nut, whichever way you want to pronounce it. But she swallowed the sun every evening, and the sun was Ra. She gave birth to it again every dawn. Okay, that's death.
From the Egyptians, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's death, renewal, rebirth. The heavens themselves became like a visible expression of cosmic rhythm. Okay. So for Egypt, time didn't simply pass; time regenerated. Okay. And there's something I want to point out here, and I always forget to do this when I talk about Egyptian history, and I really need to do this more because I know I don't, because I do love Egyptian history, even though I don't talk about it much, okay? But with this goddess Nut, is there anything you guys noticed different about her than any of the other deities and all of the other pantheons for the other belief systems?
Ain't she the oldest one?
No, I mean, just no. That's not it. What do you think,
It's a
Bob Dub?
generalization.
Huh? Bob Dub?
I don't get it. She
Okay.
swallowed the sun and gave birth to it in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Just no,
How is
no,
that?
do not know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. How is that unusual, different from any? Well, yeah. Explain.
Yes, explain.
Okay. Who was Nut married to?
It's been years.
Ra?
It's been since.
Couldn't
Yeah,
have
it's been
been.
decades since I did any sort of research on Egyptian mythology.
The sky goddess Nut was married to her twin brother Geb. Now, we have two things going on there that's interesting, okay? First, it was her twin brother, and that brings up a topic that I mentioned last week about twins. Twins is very, very important when it comes to this kind of stuff. You see it repeated in when Mark always talks about the cosmic egg. That's because I always mention it. And I mentioned the fact that, like with the cosmic egg, that goes into Greek mythology about two twins being born out of an egg.
There's another one where there were two twins, magical, and two that was regular.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me finish here because we can get distracted on that one, okay? Now, you have her and her twin brother Geb. Now, Nut was the goddess of the sky, and Geb was the god of the earth. Okay? Now, unlike all these other belief systems, Egypt is the one who made the male god of the earth and the female the goddess of the sky. Every other belief system back then had Father Sky, Mother Earth. Just a little fun fact there. Yeah. I did find that pretty interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, but you know, the other temple, I think it was the one that did a lot of what you call cutting out the heart for the sun to come back the next day after when it goes far down below the earth.
Aztecs.
Yeah, Aztecs. That's what reminded me of both of it. Because one, like what, you know, the swallowing out the sun and Aztecs doing that, the taking of the heart for the sun to come back next day. The two remind me of one another.
There's a lot of cultures that are really they're really similar. I don't really stand by. Well, we're in an esoteric agenda, so we can pretty much talk about whatever we want. But I don't stand by like the forgotten civilization theories or the ancient aliens that Africa and or Egypt and freaking South America are connected. I don't believe in that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there is some amazing similarities. We were discussing that earlier. You know, but
the entire argument that pyramids came from the inventors or designers of pyramids came from outer space or something.
From aliens, yeah, ancient aliens that created them. And I mean, I have had this conversation with Robert and you guys too before, but it does seem strange that, like, okay, when you have a workforce that's that massive, all right, you can't freaking have a foreman who doesn't have paperwork that he can show his workers and say, this is what I want you to do. You know what I mean? It's just too massive of a project for them not to have any kind of blueprints, any kind of work papers, something, you know what I mean? And there is no evidence of any of that historically.
I don't know, I disagree. May I disagree?
Well, I mean, do you know of any documents that they found that was ancient documents that explained how the pyramids were built?
No, but you know how the Greeks used to have those courts where they all used to get together and talk?
Mm-hmm.
And they invented democracy, and they could get up and orate, and they could remember the whole of the Iliad, and they had different memories from us because they had different needs. They were able to use very interesting mimetic devices to prompt memories. And you can remember 7 chunks of information at a time, but you can also remember 7 chunks in multiples of 7. So just because they weren't using our modern technology doesn't mean that they couldn't do it. They just had different ways of remembering the data than we had, and we've forgotten those, so we think they were primitive and had less than us.
Let me also point out too, I do not think they were primitive, because like when it comes to the pyramids, you're not going to find any architect that can actually rebuild the pyramids like the ancient Egyptians did. That was built in plumb, completely plumb. They're like maybe less than a quarter of an inch off. Just so people know, like they are
290 pyramids, and each one's designed different.
Well, I'm talking about the
okay. Papyrus paper, papyrus degrades after a while. Just like, if you're an architect, you're presuming that architects at the time had the same mentality as modern architects, where they would file their documentations of a council and it's in an archive in some sort of dark council cellar basement. At the time, it probably if these plans were made on papyrus, degrades, and then destroyed afterwards. I mean, why would you want to keep
that would make sense, okay? And that would make sense if the fact was that they actually have copies of the Tuat, which is the ritual for the dead whenever they go beyond it, okay? Now, if those papyrus survived, why didn't these supposed instructions on how to build a pyramid survive too? You know what I mean?
and every single bureaucratic piece of paper, every bureaucratic document to survive forever.
You would be amazed.
Bureaucratic document.
There are so many documents that are preserved right now that archaeologists are asking for people to volunteer so that they can literally go on the internet and learn how to translate freaking ancient Egypt, ancient Mesopotamian. They've got tablets like just stacked up that they haven't been able to freaking translate yet because they don't have enough people to do it.
Got large language models now.
Yeah, that's true. You have it all done in a week.
It's amazing. It really is. That,
but we're not saying that we call it like they made them tablets. Of the other country, the other civilization. They could have done something similar like that, but make an iron tablet.
Well, that's where we start getting. They've had a lot of legends, like the Emerald Tablets is one of them. Then you have the Akashic Records, which came out with Casey. He believes that the Akashic Records are hidden under the paw of the Sphinx, and things like that. But let me. Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be cool if the Sahara Desert was the bottom of the sea and they built the pyramids by letting bricks down onto the bottom of the lake, and they built this underwater lake city?
That would be interesting. That actually is. They're talking. A lot of the people they're talking about before Egypt turned into a desert, it was actually a plush, wild jungle atmosphere.
Well, they say that, but me. How do they really know? I mean, so
Uh,
many people talk such rubbish these days. This was
we-
that, and that was this, and
Yeah, but
look,
they
how do you
found.
know?
Well, they did find sea life shells. We call.
Inside the stones on the pyramid, they have biologists that's gone out there and taken samples, and they found dead
Sea life.
sea life, the cells inside of the concrete. But then they've also had to be transmitted or transferred from another location there too. So
They might have used seawater to mix their concrete.
well, concrete. That's another thing. They see back then concrete wasn't supposed to be around because this was like during the 10,000 BC, or 2,000 BC, somewhere 4,000.
But Mark, am I right in thinking that there are Roman roads that still exist in Britain?
Yeah, but didn't Rome perfect the
Yeah.
The art of
manufacturing
stone.
concrete? In fact,
Concrete.
it's argued that
Huh.
Roman concrete's much more will last longer than modern.
Mhm.
Wow.
And it has, well, 2,000 plus
Okay,
years.
So now, since we're done there, I want to talk about the Hindu
Sorry.
yugas.
What is that?
Have you heard of the yugas, Bob Dub or Mark?
No.
Yeah, but you're going to remind me the name.
Okay,
The term.
so in ancient India, the ancient Indians, they imagined cycles on a like a grander scale than what I'd been talking about before. Rather than centuries, Hindus described immense ages known as yugas. There was the Satra Yuga, the Tetra Yuga, the Vipara Yuga, and then the Kali Yuga. Now, each represented like a stage in the moral and the spiritual condition of the world, basically. So when the final age ends, creation is renewed and another cycle begins. Now,
I know what they call that these days. They call that inshitification. Every cycle gets worse than the one before, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or could it be like where we would call our first ice age went from that to the other, but in between.
now, unlike a lot of Western traditions, these cycles stretched across millions of years. They emphasize like the cosmic time, or, that cosmic time operates on a scale almost beyond human imagination, basically. So that's one thing that you have to understand. Like we have like the zodiac, the age of Aquarius, and all of this stuff. Okay, this is like way bigger. Like a yuga is like huge. This is an age that's long forgotten. You know what I mean? So that's what they believed in, and that also ties into like the Mayan long count. Okay, now I know you're into the Mayans, Bob Dove. Have you ever heard of the Mayan long count?
Yes, I have. They had 3 different great big gears, I think. And they measured cycles of time in terms of, I don't know exactly, but it wasn't just 3. They have many different cycles. 240 years and they do have a bunch of big cycles, long cycles.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that?
The Mayans.
Is that the one that they made up that big clock?
That didn't help at all. I have no idea.
Well, the one that they said that by 2012.
Yeah, that's and
Yes.
see that was something that I wanted to bring up because like now there was nothing ever found that said that the Mayans believed that the end of the world was going to come. It just there was just an end of the long count. You know what I mean? That was it.
Yeah, the age. Yeah, yeah.
And we didn't learn how to interpret what the Mayans had written down on their freaking concrete and everything until late. It was like within the 1900s, maybe the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
It was really hard for us to understand what they were actually saying when it comes to the glyphs that were written on the monuments and stuff. But they developed an understanding of cyclical time as well, is what I was getting into, and that was the long calendar. And it like I said, it didn't predict the end of the world. Instead, it tracked enormous repeating periods. Time was viewed as layered or nested, and it repeated across multiple scales. Like you had the large cycles, which contained smaller cycles, just like we have days form years, and years form larger epochs. That's what.
Well, they were saying too, through the times, different times for like, might be like 6 hours, might be for day, and rest for night. But the times was different at different times through the years.
Okay, so I so far I've mentioned Egypt, I mentioned Greece and India, then Mesoamerica. Okay, now for me personally, I believe that a pattern starts to appear across these civilizations. Okay, and I believe it's pretty remarkable, to be honest with you. And this is actually what me and Bob Dub and all of us, I guess, we were talking about this earlier. You know what I mean? There's a syncretism to it, and I can accept what a lot of people say, where like it's not them borrowing ideas from different cultures; it just emerges. You know what I mean? It took me a while to accept that. I did have a hard time with that, but I can see that. But you can't tell me that this stuff is just coincidental. You know what I mean? This is some very deep stuff. You had the Egyptians, the Greek, the Indian, India, and here in America, they all believed it. You know, and that's separated. I mean, here with
Egyptian and Greece are interconnected anyway.
Right.
Let me okay. To me, how you register time, years. How everyone says the solar system's getting bigger by so many libiums, but what I'm not saying, when that gets bigger, so does our solar system where we live at. So everything gets expanded by changes, the time, like how many is in a day and night, and the seasons. That gets altered as well by our solar system gets wider. Well, the size of it, what I'm saying, how it matures, gets bigger.
No, hold on. What were you?
There is some. I think what you're talking about is the red shift. Mm-hmm. When astronomers look at stars, there's certain stars that look red and certain that look blue. And the ones that have got red shift are assumed to be moving away from us. And the ones that have got blue shift are assumed to be moving towards us. Well, and so there's a theory that says the entire universe is expanding away from a central point. But that doesn't mean it's true. It just means that there's some scientists who've guessed that could be happening.
Well,
There's
I was
also
just
the concept of after a certain point, the universe, what's the opposite to expand?
well, yeah,
Collapses.
Contract.
well, no,
Yes.
what I was but what I was referring to is at the
Yeah.
beginning of time. What was our solar system like? How round was it? How far? How
Well,
long was it
that's
around
not
it?
that's actually
Some
that's not
But
how it started. Okay, now if you go according to what these people are talking about, it's the Big Bang theory. Like our solar system didn't originally start with, or it's a circle and it's rotating. This is actually very organized compared to what a lot of astronomers are saying it used to be like. There was a lot of chaos where things were colliding with one another and planets didn't orbit around the sun like they
yeah,
were supposed to. That took millions and millions of years if you go according to this. And when you guys are talking about the Big Bang theory, I had Mark do a Google search like 2 weeks ago, and his ego was so big he didn't want to say that originally the Big Bang was called freaking the cosmic egg.
It wasn't originally. It was one of many names.
And the
Within
cosmic
blood.
egg was the main one. It was literally written on the
Last
paper.
100 years, I think it came with, what, 4 or 5 different names?
Before it was coined, the Big Bang, the original paper for the thesis.
One of the originals.
Okay.
Again,
No,
I
the
think
guy
it was
who
4 or
came
5
up,
within a very short period of time.
it was
We're talking
called
about less than a decade.
it was called the cosmic egg. Okay, it was literally by the guy who came up with the concept, the coin. The first person to ever come out with it coined it the
Right.
cosmic egg, and it was changed. I find that odd. Okay, and another thing that really sticks out to me when it comes to this stuff is everything we've discussed so far is separated by oceans, by languages, and they're also separated by years. And I'm talking like thousands of years. Okay. So, I mean, it's weird how this stuff is actually, imagine how all of these civilizations imagine reality is like moving through like this great cycle rather than on a straight line. And you take a look at the way these astronomers are talking today, and when you people who are talking about the Big Bang theory, that's something else. Okay.
well, what I was referring to after the Big Bang, and all that gets mashed together for planets and all that. The creation of the sun, Earth, and all of the planets. But within that time, what was the what you call it, the circle, the rotation at that time? What size of the rotation? If it was
nobody
like a
knows.
4.
Yeah, nobody knows that. Like
Yeah,
that.
but okay, but what I'm referring to is it
Well, I
doesn't
know
span.
what you're referring to, Robert. I'm just saying, like you're asking impossible questions to answer. Like, I mean, nobody knows that stuff. Like you
Yeah,
realize
So
that, right?
what they think about with that universe expanding and contracting is that they think that it might be that the planets move out from a central point until they're so big that the whole system becomes destabilized and it just explodes in a single second, and it goes down and it becomes a black hole. A black hole is where all the matter of the whole universe has been condensed so much that it's smaller than a pinhead. And then they think because it's been condensed down to so small that it's smaller than a pinhead, that then it explodes again and it starts again from this pinhead going out. But there's another theory that doesn't think that the Earth is expanding and contracting, and it thinks that those red shifts and blue shifts are just what we see in our instruments. and they're not actual reality. This other theory thinks that there was nothing. There was complete nothing. There was entropy. And this nothing was so nothingish that there was no temperature in it. And after 1 billion years, for some bizarre reason, there was a temperature fluctuation of 1/1,000,000th of a degree. And that temperature fluctuation was enough to make an electrical charge. And that was the first electron. And when one electron was made, because of what they call Goldilocks conditions, a whole lot of other ones pop up. And then you've got all these millions of little electric charges all over the earth. And because there are these electric charges, they make a positive charge be created because they induce their opposite. So now all of a sudden you have a Goldilocks condition where all the positive charges just arrive, and then the negative charges and positive charges attract each other, and you get a hydrogen atom. So now you have all these hundreds and millions of hydrogen atoms. All these hydrogen atoms collapse together, and helium is produced at the same time because of the collapse. And suddenly you have big burning balls of gas, hydrogen and helium burning all over the place. And then as these burn, it's like a huge big forge, and they combine, and they create lithium, and they create iron and everything, and then they burn out. They run out of energy. They explode as they burn out, and in that explosion you get planets being thrown out, big blocks of iron and everything.
Well,
So just because people think something, Robert, doesn't mean that it's real. It's just people who look at something that they've no idea about, and they imagine all sorts of fantastic fairy stories. And then they go to science school or science, whatever it is, science lab, and they test it out and see which one of them they think has the best theory. And then they fight for centuries over who's got it right. But nobody knows.
And I want to add on that too, because Bob Dub hit on something. Now this comes to deeper questions, okay? And it is a deeper question. And the thing of it is what one of the biggest questions is, why are humans being so drawn to cycles when it comes to history, and what I've been talking to you guys about and what she just said, okay? And that has to do with observation, okay? Now, when people look at like nature, they quickly find out like nature teaches us all the time, okay? That goes from breathing to your heartbeat to, the changing moon. There's the tide, the seasons. You have the weather. Yeah, you have birth, death, and renewal. Okay.
Yes.
So perhaps humanity didn't like invent cyclical time. Perhaps humanity just observed it, and that's what we've been doing. Like what she's talking about with science. That's just an observation. Then we asked like whether the same patterns governed history itself, basically. You know what I mean? And that's what it is. It's like we talk about this Big Bang theory. Nobody knows. Nobody has a clue if it's true. First, they have to turn around and they have to prove that magnetites exist. Okay, if they can't prove that magnetites exist, then they can't prove that the Big Bang is actually real. That's why it's still a theory. Okay, if they could actually create magnetites, they would have free energy. When you see those videos of people using dry ice to make this thing float above the freaking air and turn around on the little racetrack, that's all about magnetites. That's what they're talking about. Imagine taking a magnet and cutting it in half, and when you cut it in half, there's no positive and negative. It's just negative and negative, or it's positive and positive. That's a magnetite.
Yeah, but you did hear about NASA finding out what's on the moon. They found out that at a specific time in the past, the moon had its own orb, magnetic, and it was starting to form. And it was when Earth and the Moon got together, something interfered with the Moon's magnetic field. Discontinued because it found out that the Moon was having its own, like,
It's still got a magnetic field.
yeah,
It
NASA.
the oceans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it controls the tides. Now, there's also something cool that Bob Dub said the other day when it comes to the Earth, in the center of the Earth, and how, because there are people. I mean, the Moon itself is got its own theories altogether. Like there's a lot of people that do believe that the Earth and the Moon collided. Then there's people that don't believe it. But the whole mystery behind that is why is it that we actually have a freaking body of mass that big freaking rotating around our planet? Because by all accounts, our moon is way, way bigger than what it should be.
Yes, apparently so.
And that's something too right there that I found interesting when you were talking about that.
Well, they
We're
were
too
saying,
small to capture. Apparently, we're too small to capture such a big. And you look at the other moons that they think have been captured by traveling into the orbit and just getting stuck in the orbit. They're generally quite small to be held there by gravitational force, but they think that the Earth is different. And a whole different thing happened. And part of that difference is why we have life and the rest of the universe that we can see is completely barren. I mean, if you take the percentage of life that exists in the universe, basically there's so many zeros of a percent that there is no life in the universe. Well, I know that that's a mathematical trick, but
you know how they
very rare. Thank you, Mark. That's what I was going for. Girl language.
You know how they do that thing where the satellite thing picks up that solar system, where they're looking and seeing the shape of when the Earth, the planet, goes in front of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in another way, they can find out how big it is. Okay, because if they take it from this time this year, look at it in another 6 years. If it takes longer, the shade to disappear, that means the size of the solar system, that planet route is bigger.
Now, I'm really glad that you're excited, Robert, and I want to bring it back to Esoteric Agenda so that I can end the show.
Yes.
No, you guys, this is great. This is great.
Off.
This is great because, but we're at an hour and 3 minutes here, so I want to go ahead and bring it back to Esoteric Agenda with one of my cool endings, okay? So that we can get everybody's socials and stuff after I say this, and then we can end this and be done with it. Because this is the perfect place to end it, especially when Wild Man gets started. Because he's stirred, he is stirred, dude. I'm gonna tell you right now. Once the Wild Man starts getting stirred, we got to end this. So
yeah.
So bringing it back to Esoteric Agenda. I want to say that by the time Plotinus entered history, the idea of the great year had already been evolved for centuries, okay? He inherited a universe filled with recurring celestial motions, philosophical speculation, religious symbolism, and astronomical observations. His genius was not inventing cosmic cycles. It was asking what those cycles reveal about the relationship between the soul and ultimate reality. The question would reshape philosophy for centuries to come. But before we can understand Plotinus, or Plotinus's answer, we must first understand another question. If the universe truly moves according to hidden patterns, can those patterns be expressed mathematically? So with that being said, I'm going to ask if each of you can give your socials so that if anybody wishes to contact you, they can, starting with Bob Dub.
Thanks, Roger. You can find me on minds.com as Bob Dub. I'm also on Swarm Space, swarm-space.lovable.app, and X as Bob Dub _on_minds. And you can find me, probably if you want to talk to me, the best place on YouTube. I've got 3 different YouTube channels. The one where I do the most interaction is called Bob Dub. There's also another one called Sloppy Joe Videos, which is AI-based, AI-generated content that I compile into videos. And there's a third one that's just started called DWMW, which is the live stream of all the Dude Where's My Wallet videos. That is where I am at. Thank you very much indeed, Roger.
All right. Now, how about you, Mr. Edworthy?
Yeah, just one site, minds.com, and the username Edworthy.
Okay. And you can find me and Robert at my account on minds.com, which is Roger_Hanson. You can also find us on Teams as well as Element Matrix at Roger's Hangout. I'm on Element Matrix at the Infinite Imaginarium, as well as the Quantum Gathering, where you can get in touch with us if you go on there. But you have to have top super secret clearance to make it onto the Quantum Gathering.
You have no idea how hard it is to get it.
It's
Ask Mark.
We're talking MI6 clearance.
Yeah, like a 5-year process, guys.
Right.
So don't get excited.
Yeah, the amount of forms I had to fill in just to.
Now, if you would like to contact us on Discord, I do have the Wonderful World of Weirdness on Discord, and I also have Strange Stories on Minds.com that you can contact us at. The full edited version of this will be on Strange Stories on YouTube. 15-minute clips will be added to the Wonderful World of Weirdness on YouTube. But you can find both the clips and the full edits on Rumble at the Wonderful World of Weirdness if you just want to watch all of it and you don't care. That's just to give different selection to people. Some people like to watch hour-long videos. Some people just like watching 15 minutes, so I give them both. So if you want to catch our live streams, you can catch us on YouTube and on Rumble at Roger Hanson or Live with Roger Hanson, and I am on Kick as well as on Twitch. On Kick, I am Roger_Hanson, and at Twitch, I am Infamous 1969. So you can check us out there. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this show, please give us a like, subscribe, and share. Make a comment. That's the most important part. Just make a comment. We love to hear you. Just say hi. So with that being said, I hope you have a good day, good night. Thank you guys on the panel for being with me, and we will talk to you later.